sad. Here you have someone pretending to be a tough guy turn out to be just a second banana for Joy Behar, the poster child for Trump's arrangement. Sadly, Bob is now just another gibbering, enfeebled ninny, surrounded by inept relatives as he frets about how Trump's in power, and he's not. See, Trump's rise coincides with De Niro's decline, and the person who knows it most is De Niro. He's a fine example of how not to turn loss into bitterness. There are plenty of people who don't like Trump, but don't let it warp their minds or their ability to speak aloud among grown-ups or The View. But the Schiffs and De Niros of the world are emotionally damaged by politics to a point where they can't even assess their own emotions.
Raging bull meets sarcastic bullhorn. What do you get when Fox News' favorite pocket-sized pulverizer, Greg Gutfeld, squares off with the cinematic growl of a fading Hollywood lion? You get a brawl so delightfully unbalanced, it made Raging Bull look like a guided meditation. Robert De Niro, Hollywood's most decorated grump and unofficial spokesperson for gritted teeth, tried to come in swinging, armed with righteous indignation and the intensity of a man who thinks yelling equals wisdom. But then came Gutfeld. Snark locked, eyebrow raised, armed with sarcasm, wit, and a punchline delivery so sharp it could slice through De Niro's last Oscar speech. This wasn't a debate. It was a cultural mugging disguised as comedy. And as the dust settled, Bobby wasn't just speechless. He looked like he'd been handed a script from real life, and for once, didn't know his lines. Strap in. This takedown didn't come with explosions. Just brutal clarity. And the crowd? They gave it a standing ovation.
Last night, an elderly, confused man went missing in New York. Luckily, a band of self-satisfied elitists found him babbling on the street, threw some pants on him, gave him a stage.
Oh my God.
I'm going to say one thing. Trump.
From method acting to moral preaching, once upon a time, Robert De Niro was a towering force in cinema. An actor so committed he made mobsters nervous and taxi drivers proud. Fast forward to now, and he's morphed into a sermon-slinging, scowl-wielding elder statesman of outrage, perched high above the plebs in a Manhattan penthouse, shouting moral guidance like a Shakespearean ghost with a grudge. Because when the nation teeters on chaos, who better to restore sanity than an 80-year-old millionaire actor who hasn't been in a grocery store since dial-up internet? De Niro's transformation from cultural icon to cranky rooftop prophet is less inspiring and more like watching a statue come to life just to lecture tourists. And somewhere out there, Americans whispered in unison, wasn't he in Meet the Fockers?
De Niro graced the knitting circle in hell known as The View, where he tried to link random thoughts into a sentence. Joy was there to wind him up, since he's played some of the most unredeemable characters.
You have played some of the most really unredeemable characters. Travis Bickle. Travis Bickle was a psychopathic taxi driver. Jake LaMotta, who used to beat his wife, and he was in the Raging Bull. Is Trump worse than they are?
To me.
Reddit brain, razor wit, enter Greg Gutfeld, the guy who looks like he just emerged from a Reddit thread titled Sarcastic Comebacks for Clueless Celebrities. Against all odds and half the cast of The View, Gutfeld has managed to evolve into late night's reluctant hero. And when it came time to confront Hollywood's loudest oracle, he didn't shout, didn't flail. He deployed a weapon far more dangerous. Irony. Dry as the Mojave. Precision calibrated. Enough to make a rainforest wither. With every sly jab, he deconstructed the De Niro myth not like a critic, but like a casual Yelp reviewer who discovered the soup was actually ego-flavored.
An actor is tough. For how does one handle real life without a script? Not equipped to think analytically, you're left powerless when observing your own predictions about life turn out wrong. It's not supposed to be this way, De Niro thinks. Only the cool guys get to win. Sorry, Bob. That's only in the movies, but at least you'll always have joy.
From Godfather to God Complex, De Niro used to be a cultural titan, the guy you watched in mob movies while nervously locking your doors. Now, he's the guy who shows up to political events like an unpaid extra in a documentary about grumpy old men yelling at clouds. His signature brood has crossed the line from brooding into full-blown medical condition. Every public appearance is laced with the same expression, I just ate a lemon, and also, democracy is dying. The man who once made silence terrifying now can't stop talking. And nobody's quite sure what he's trying to say, except that it's always very, very urgent.
Kills me. Talk about persuasive. Really, I was on the fence about Trump, but then I decided to really listen to one of the great generational leaders of American pop culture. And the clenched fists at the end, that really drove it home. It looked like he was pressing a 2-pound weight in a Jenny Craig commercial.
Oh my God.
Look at it again. It's so cute. It's like he found out the restaurant serves Jell-O, or that he won a $10 scratch off, or he scored a cameo in Jersey Shore, or he had his first number 2 in a
Spotlight versus stage light. Greg Gutfeld didn't need a stage. Just a spotlight, a microphone, and a pile of Robert De Niro's recent interviews. Because when Gutfeld turned that spotlight on De Niro, what we saw wasn't a towering legend. It was an old man trying to play Hamlet in a TikTok age. Stripped of Hollywood lighting and award show reverence, De Niro wasn't connecting with Americans. He was yelling at them like an elderly neighbor who thinks the Wi-Fi causes migraines. Gutfeld saw through it. Saw the fragile self-importance beneath the gravelly monologues. And without raising his voice, he conducted a comic autopsy of celebrity delusion.
Poor Bob. You know, he's like a star whose girlfriend dumps him for a bigger star who's in the White House while you're in Dirty Grandpa. Oh, man. So now the resistance is reduced to applauding tantrums. Who knew De Niro's lasting role would be irrelevant gas bag pleasing irrelevant peers? And he's doing this as Trump organizes a summit. Not a war, a summit. And you got to wonder, if it were President Hillary, Bob's choice, would you actually have a summit or would you have a war? But forget deeds. What matters is adulation received from an emotional display before a packed sea of millionaire lemmings. So who cares that Trump meets with North Korea? It's no meet the parents, right?
Soap operas and Yelp reviews. Here's where Gutfeld delivered the kill shot. Not with venom, but with bemused observation. He simply said what everyone else was too afraid to admit. How bizarre it is that a man who spent his life pretending to be other people suddenly believes he's qualified to lecture the public on who they should be. De Niro delivered his speeches like a daytime soap actor discovering a secret twin. Gutfeld countered like a guy reviewing a cold sandwich on Yelp. The contrast was stunning. De Niro puffed up like a moral peacock. Gutfeld casually popped the bubble with the precision of someone who's lived in reality longer than De Niro's last standing ovation.
Oh, clearly has thought about this, more so than his career. His choice of roles is now down to cinnamon and lobster. He was then asked about the Trump kids. At least he doesn't want my kids to take this the wrong way.
I don't want my kids to take this the wrong way, but if my kids did what these kids did, I wouldn't want to be related to them. I would disown them.
The Mirror and the Millionaire. Then came the mirror, held up by Gutfeld, tilted just enough to catch De Niro in an unflattering light. The reflection? Not Travis Bickle. Not Vito Corleone. Just an out-of-touch millionaire furrowing his brow at people who can't afford eggs. And the best part? Gutfeld barely had to try. De Niro handed him the material wrapped in outrage and monologue pauses. He's become the human version of a comment section. Loud, angry, and convinced he's right. Gutfeld simply narrated what we were already thinking. The joke wasn't just on De Niro, it was De Niro.
Sad end for a great actor. He went from Raging Bull, to this. You know, De Niro kind of represents Hollywood in the sense that they realize that they're losing influence with the public. And that's what's generating the emotional response. They've never felt less important.
The banana peel of ego. The audience didn't gasp. They laughed. Because Gutfeld did what so many wanted. He punctured the Hollywood illusion without apology. De Niro, the man who hasn't taken public transit since the Reagan administration, tried to explain the working class. Meanwhile, Gutfeld, who probably loses arguments with soda machines, actually spoke their language. De Niro performed. Gutfeld peeled back the performance and found a microphone hidden inside a banana peel. One was trying to save democracy. The other was diagnosing a midlife crisis in real time. The result? Less political commentary, more comedy special, with De Niro as the punchline.
Let's go to, I think he was in Canada, Toronto, opening a restaurant or doing something, and this is what he had to say.
And I just want to make a note of apology for the idiotic behavior of my president. That's a disgrace. And I apologize to Justin Trudeau, and the other people at the G7. It's disgusting.
You know, I actually feel bad for him because I think he's one of those people that has never emotionally recovered from 2016. This is a guy who's got serious Trump.
Gangsters get fact-checked. Imagine this. The man who once played the scariest gangster in cinema gets fact-checked by the shortest guy on the Fox News set. And somehow it worked. Gutfeld didn't gloat, he grinned. Because when the truth gets this ridiculous, sarcasm becomes public service. De Niro's speeches still kill in coastal cocktail parties. But in real America? People roll their eyes between price checks at Walmart. Gutfeld turned De Niro's act into an exhibit. A cultural relic trying to stay relevant by yelling at a generation that stopped listening somewhere around. Analyze that.
I find that he's smartest when they drop his audio. But, you know, it's kind of sad because you can see, like, people who are stuck in some kind of, I don't know, derangement, they can't see it themselves. And they're not surrounded by people telling them that they have a problem. And they lack self-awareness because everybody either tells them they're wonderful or wants to sell them cocaine. So he has no clue what he's doing. And he's upset over the emotional nature. His anger is emotional about Trump. It's nothing practical.
The monologue Meltdown. And finally, the finale. The stage flipped. The actor became the act. The crowd wasn't in a theater. They were in real life, and they were howling. De Niro faded back into his mist of righteous fury, while Gutfeld stood center stage, delivering a masterclass in comedic vivisection. Legacy isn't destroyed with a roar. It's worn down by reality. De Niro, once the vintage bottle of Hollywood prestige, had become vinegar, poured into a solo cup and served with a side of political rage. Gutfeld didn't scream. He didn't insult. He simply raised an eyebrow and let the delusion collapse.
The most boring interview. He used to sell his movies on Leno and Letterman, and it was like watching a WNBA game. You just were just bored to death. And all of a sudden, Trump became president, and he started saying things. I want to punch the president in the face. You know, he's a crooked piece of... And then all of a sudden, De Niro became interesting during his media tours. And that's the only way now he can get publicity for his film, is by cursing and...
The punchline wore a tux. And here's the kicker. De Niro didn't fall because of time. He fell because he's clinging to a myth that expired 2 presidencies ago. While he imagines himself as the moral compass of America, most of America is trying to change the channel. Gutfeld didn't attack. He exposed. Held up the mirror and let De Niro unravel. This wasn't a takedown. It was an intervention. A whispered, "Hey man, maybe sit this one out." And as Gutfeld sipped coffee and cracked wise, the real sting wasn't in the joke, it was in its accuracy. De Niro thought he was still the voice of a generation. Turns out, the mic was off and the audience had already left.